It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
That was not the ending that anybody in particular had in mind. The Commanders' magical run is over. We're talking about it live on YouTube at the Team 980, at Craig Hoffman, at 1067 The Fan. Hoffman solo for this one. I'm going to try to corral my thoughts. Wrote a couple things down on the game, on the season as we go. Well, that sucked. That was no way for that season to end. It was no way for a team that did such a good job of taking care of the football, so a team that competed to the bitter end at all time, a team that frankly didn't get blown out outside. Like the last time they really got blown out was week 1 against Tampa. And that was, I don't even know if you want to call that a blowout. But this got real ugly late, I think, in part because Dan decided to continue to compete, to be who he was. He wasn't going to punt on a 4th and 12 and take the cosmetic upgrade of the scoreline, and I actually give him a lot of credit for that. But at the end of the day, it's a lot to a little, and the Commanders just could not get anything going offensively in the second half, and they couldn't get anything going really in the first half when they had a real chance to take, I would say, even control of this game, thanks to the fact that they could not hold on to the magic bean. There was a lot to take away from the Eagles' Week 16 game for Washington, and a lot of good things to obviously take away because they won that game, and they won that game despite 5 turnovers. The lesson from that game, in the snarkiest way I could possibly say this, was not to commit 5 turnovers again. That was not the thing that should have carried over, and I think it's hard in a game like this and in a moment like this to not obviously put everything in the larger context because the season's over. There are no more games. It is always jarring at the end because it's just over. Like there's no adjustments to make for next week. There's no okay, let's see what they can do a week from today. It's what changes get made, who's back. Like there's a million questions that Logan and I will start unpacking later, even this week. But certainly as the weeks go on, we'll process this game and then get into those big giant questions. Start looking ahead to the draft and free agency, and in some ways that's exciting because this team was so far ahead of schedule and all that kind of stuff. But I think really a lot of today's game comes down to a lot of the problems that we thought this team had coming into the season, and that's really cool because we never thought that they could get to this point. Like in a way, it's a triumph because the things that they just could not fix were the things that were the root cause, I think, of a lot of their issues in the end. And the fact that they were able to stave off that reality until they were one of the NFL's Final 4 deserves an immense amount of credit to Dan Quinn, to Cliff Kingsbury, to Joe Witt, on down the list. And frankly, up the list, Adam Peters, the way he was able to plug some of these holes, the way that they had visions for some of these players. But in the end of the day, man, like they needed a corner who could cover A.J. Brown. And there aren't a lot of them out there, but they didn't have a guy with a shot today. And they needed talented skill players who can make plays outside of Terry McLaurin. And guys like Austin Eckler and De'Ami Brown had magical runs in this playoffs and were 2 of their best players in the first 2 games. And they had the ball in their hands in key situations today. De'Ami in the first half, and then Austin in the second half, where it gets knocked out. And that probably just, it happens to good players. Mark Andrews in Baltimore would like a word, and I'm not talking about the drop at the end, but like Mark Andrews is a great player, super reliable, fumbled in a big spot last week. It happens, but it happens less to the best players. That's why they're the best. There's a trust level there. And De'Ami trying to do a little bit too much on that catch and run, on that middle screen. Like, bro, just get north-south. Anytime you start bowing back and you're not like Tyreek Hill fast, that's probably not going to go great. And he gets the ball punched out. Eckler, and by the way, like that one is a little bit on Jaden too. Like you can't make your guy slide there. And he slides, tries to get up. The ball's not tight to his body. It's a lack of attention to detail, and you get the ball punched out. Jeremy McNichols is stuck returning kicks in part because of Eckler not returning kicks since he got back from the concussion. And he doesn't, like Jeremy McNichols was awesome for this team in a very limited role this year. But he's Jeremy McNichols, and he hasn't played in the NFL meaningful snaps since 2021 before this year, if I'm remembering my Jeremy McNichols facts correctly. And those are the three guys that fumble. And then you have, or three of the fumbles, I should say. And then you have, obviously, the Jaden pick late is whatever. He's trying to make a play to Terry. But also, I think, speaking of Terry, like the Eagles did a great job of not letting Terry beat them after he got the first one. And so the Eagles just did a tremendous job capitalizing on Washington's mistakes. In many ways, this was a deluxe version of what Washington did to Detroit last week. And let me tell you, it does not feel very good to be on the other end of it. It feels real good to be on the Washington versus Detroit end, on the Philly versus Washington end. To be on the Washington end this week doesn't feel great at all. But ultimately, this game's lost in the first half. It's lost when you have a chance. And, even that first drive, man, I mean, this is so long ago at this point, but you go 18 plays, you get 2 fourth-down conversions. You ultimately decide on a 4th and 3 to kick the field goal. I'm fine with it. You go all that way and get nothing out of it. Like, that would suck. You're in much more makeable range for Zane Gonzalez. I heard Brady on the broadcast be like, "Oh, why would you kick it now?" It's like, well, because the other field goals were not ones that you really trust him to make. Now you've gotten in range and you trust him to make this one. It's 4th and a long 3, fine, kick the field goal. But then you come out and you give up a 60-yarder on the first drive. And I think that's the other or the first play. I think that's the other really unfortunate and uncharacteristic thing about this game, man. Their tackling was terrible today. And they it's just a bunch of stuff that they haven't done since literally week 1. And I think that's the frustrating thing about this. If I was going to go down, like if I'm Dan Quinn, and I think of the quote that he had this week about some of the reaction after week 1, where people were telling him, "Hey man, it's going to be a long haul." And he was like, "Watch, like F you." He's like, "I didn't take it personally, but I was just kind of like, hey, watch." Because, by the way, I love that. I didn't really take it personally, but hey, F you. Those two things are, only Dan could make that make sense. And he did. But he was like, this is not how we get down. And that phrase is such a Dan Quinn phrase, how we get down. And this game was not how Washington got down the whole year. Philly really messed them up on special teams today. Philly's special teams was good today at a level that Washington's has been great all season. And they typically do not get out physicaled in that department. And I thought they did on multiple kickoffs today. And boy, were there a lot of kickoffs today. By the way, speaking of special teams, real quick before I forget, raise your hand if you knew Tress Way was right-handed. That's right, none of you, including me. He's been the only punter that I've covered in Washington. The most consistent player that has been here since I've been here. Punts left-footed the entire time. Apparently, he's right-handed. He threw Ben Sinnott a pass right-handed. But back to the point, Washington got down today in a way that they have not all year. They were out-physicaled. They were manhandled in certain areas. Philly felt like the more physical team. And I think you felt to an extent some of the issues or the lack of talent, the dominance really, relative to Philly up front, because Philly's 2 lines are great. But I actually thought it was more on the perimeter today where Philly felt more physical. The way that there just wasn't a ton of air when Washington was on offense, Jaden having to extend and not really, getting to do what he wants to do from the pocket. Them able to get some pressure with 4 and that actually working because there's just not space on the back end. Typically, if you do that against Jaden, if the receivers can win or there's space in the zone, he'll dice you apart. The rush almost doesn't matter. But today, Philly did a good job being the right amount of physical. Meanwhile, when Washington's trying to get physical, and I know people are going to talk about the refs, and let me make a note. I will talk about the refs because it is on some level something to talk about in this game. And I haven't taken a look at the comments yet, but I'm sure they're going bananas with, screw Sean Hockley, Eagles are 7-0, whatever. But those were penalties on Lattimore. The fight thing is put that in its own category. But the PI was PI. The holds and all that kind of stuff with the holds. I mean, it's the 3rd and 13 where they get off the field. The late hit on Sainer still, I don't like it. I'm not telling you it's a good call, but it's legally correct, which is why they didn't overturn it. I thought Pereira did a really good job with that on the Fox broadcast, where he's just like, look, is this like the most egregious hit ever? No, but the contact happens after his left foot is out of bounds. Legally, that is what was called, and thus they can't overturn it on the instant review. And so you can not like that call, and you can think it's soft, but it's correct. And Washington felt like their physicality was out of control and unproductive, where Phillies was in your face, right at you, productive. Some of the blitz pickups, all the ways in which they just gave it to Washington. The hitting, this was not a signature Washington Commanders 2024, 2025 play style game. And if they were going to lose, I would have loved it to have at least been where they went down their way, where they went down and ultimately Philly's talent was overwhelming. And it's just like, dang, Saquon reverse hurdled a dude, or A.J. Brown mossed a guy. And it's just like, well, what are you going to do? That they're that good. Devontae Smith makes a one-handed whatever. Sick. Like, cool. But to go down this way, turnovers, sloppiness, mental mistakes, silly physicality nonsense, lack of discipline, that doesn't feel right. And it's something that they're going to have to live with. And we're all, I guess, in our own way, going to have to live with the entirety of the offseason. Couple of other notes, and then I will brave some of the comments, and then we're all going to go watch the AFC Championship game. Terry disappearing in this game was something that I am excited to excited is not the right word. I'm intrigued to dive into with Logan and the film when we get there, which I'm not going to guarantee is Tuesday. I'm in no rush to watch this film. But we'll see. But it didn't feel like there was a concerted effort to get McLaurin the ball in the way that there has been in a lot of games. He gives them so much energy when he's involved. And you felt that because he scores the touchdown at 7:08, I think it was, in the second quarter. And then they don't touch the ball again until that 39-second drive at the end of the half, where Jaden was just insane in the first half. It's hard to understate or overstate how good he was in the first half. And unfortunately, because of the McNichols kickoff return fumble, the Eagles just get back-to-back drives in between. And Terry's not involved for this huge late stretch of the second quarter. And then, like, the whole start of the third, he's not a part of the game. And it really wasn't until that catch that he had on the relatively meaningless drive late, the one that ultimately ends when Jaden just chucks it up for Terry at the end and Mitchell gets the pick. I think that's his only catch of the second half. Like, that's not good enough. And so that is something that they got better and better and better and better at as the year went. But it is something that I think remains a priority for them moving forward as long as Terry is Terry. And just I'll close my Terry thought with this quick thought on McLaurin that hit me during the game. We've talked about how guys like Diami have gotten better. Like they're just literally better players than they are or they were when they got to camp this year or when they broke camp this year. And we've talked about some of the rookies and obviously Jaden and his improvement week over week. We've chronicled on Take Command here. And Terry is a better Terry was always an excellent football player who needed a quarterback to showcase just how good he was. But Terry McLaurin got better at football this year in his age 29 season. He's better at the catch point. He's a better route runner, and he's better after the catch. And he's always been really good at those things. But that slant to break those tackles and go is a type of thing that he did on a more regular occasion in college at Ohio State. And it's kind of a thing I've been waiting for years for him, where he is just able to break through because he is hard to tackle, but then the breakaway speed. And I was like, I don't know, maybe he's just not 22 years old anymore, and that happens to most guys not named Saquon Barkley. And sure enough, Terry today and last week has 2 monster catch and run touchdowns where he runs away from people. And we've seen the vertical speed over the top for years. But to see it as a ball carrier here late in the season makes me excited to see what he can do next year. Can he break even more long ones? Terry finishing the season, 82 catches, 1,096 yards. He's second in the NFL in the regular season with 13 touchdowns. And obviously tacks on 1 in each of the 3 games here this weekend, or in these playoffs this month in January. All right. I guess last thing from the game, or I guess last 2 things from the game. One, I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but just a real hat tip to Dan Quinn on how he managed this game. And you're going, hat tip to a guy who lost 55-23? Yeah. Hat tip to a guy who lost 55-23. The fake punt early takes guts. The 4th down decisions take guts. But this is who they were. And he fully embraced it the deeper and deeper the season got. And I think that's commendable. And that gives me real hope for a lot of coaches who will flirt with some of that stuff and not be able to have a really good read for the game and the feel for it, or have their team prepared for that moment. And it feels like, oh, wait, coach, we're going for it. Oh, we're going to haphazardly throw out this fake punt. Like, no, he knew to win this game, you had to go big. And he went for it. And sometimes when you swing big, you miss in a big way. And ultimately, like some of these lack of, or the aggression late to be like, I'm going to try to extract that 3% chance that we win when there's 12 minutes to go versus just punting and making the scoreline look more cosmetic. I commend Dan for his competitiveness. That's who he's been the entire season. And I for one, appreciate that. And I think that's going to do this team really good in the long haul. Okay, the part you've all been waiting for, the refs. Sean Hockley and his crew missed a lot of key calls in this game, and most of them favored the Eagles, and that really sucks because a lot of them came at really critical junctures of the game. A lot of them came on Eagles scoring drives. Everything from the obviously the biggest one feels like the Saquon Barkley hold that gets missed on Luvu on a big play, but earlier than that, even there is the Devontae Smith missed catch on the sideline where his foot comes down out of bounds. And there's like 6-7 other calls in the game that are questionable. And obviously the physicality between Lattimore and A.J. Brown, where they just call a foul on Lattimore. Like, are you kidding me? What a wacky one that is. And so there's just a lot of different stuff in this game that sucks on that front. I think when you lose by this margin, it's really hard to complain about the refs and say they're the reason that you lost. And Philly played better today. You don't get to turn the ball turn the ball over 5 times and complain about the refs. You can complain about the refs writ large. They're bad. Sean Hockley, I've never watched a game of his and been like, that guy's great at his job. And a lot of them, frankly, were his flags. And I do think that is something the NFL probably should be aware of. It's like, hey, there's this really weird pattern of when this guy refs the Eagles, they don't lose, and there seems to be a lot of complaints about the officiating. Also, when he refs Washington, there's some really shoddy stuff with him. So does he just suck at his job in general? Or is this a problem specific to these 2 teams? I think they should figure that out. But the refs are not the reason the Commanders lost. The Commanders are the reason lost. Or the Commanders are the reason the Commanders lost. And second to the Commanders and their own self-imposed issues, turnovers, fumbles, etc., are the Eagles, because they played fantastic and they thrashed Washington for their mistakes. I believe it ultimately wound up being 28 points off of turnovers for Washington, or for Philadelphia, in a game where you only scored 23, period. So that's kind of my bit on the refs. Yeah, offseason. We got a lot of time to talk about the offseason, but I'm excited to see what Adam Peters and company can do. The way this coaching and GM cycle went, Washington's front office and coaching staff looks like it's mostly going to stay in place. I am curious to see if some lower level assistants get poached. Like as these guys fill their staffs, does someone like Davita Pritchard get poached to go be an offensive coordinator somewhere? It's not going to be because of money. I can tell you that much. That's a cool thing about the new ownership group. They're going to pay for people to stay. But Lance Newmark, who was up for the Jets GM job potentially to go join Aaron Glenn, he's going to stay with Peters. It looks like as there's no more GM jobs open. There are other folks in this front office that I think could be poachable. A guy like Ben Sosna was kind of a wonder kid in Detroit. Does Glenn or Ben Johnson try to poach them for an assistant GM role or something like that in their front offices in Chicago and New York? I know in Chicago that job's not open because Ian Cunningham has been one of the top GM candidates around the league in the last couple of years. He's the assistant GM in Chicago. So, if he ultimately gets a job next year, could Sosna be there? Yes, but that's next year. We'll deal with that then. But outside of that, there should be a lot of continuity in both front office and coaching staff. And that's amazing. Because to get to build off of this, an NFC Championship game appearance in year one with a rookie quarterback, 4 years remaining on his rookie quarterback contract, a ton of cap space, all your draft picks, plus the extra third rounder that you got in the Dotson trade. I guess you gave up one of those, your own natural third rounder, which is now going to be much, much later than initially thought. You gave up that in the Lattimore trade, but you're in great shape. And by the way, I think Peters probably hired a few scouts after the draft last year. There's always a flip. Like Black Monday in the NFL is the day after the season. Black Monday in scouting world is the day after the draft. And so this is actually like Adams' first fully staffed the way he wants it off season. So let's see what they can do. And they've got a need at corner. They've got a need at wide receiver. They've got needs along the offensive and defensive lines. They should hopefully have a succession plan at linebacker, but I would definitely be bringing Bobby Wagner back. I would see what Zach wants to do at tight end, unless you think that Sinnott is ready to take a huge step and Zach is kind of blocking him, and you're going to have to take that short-term hit for the long-term gain. But those are conversations that we'll have over the next couple of weeks here on the show. We'll try to go through position by position, spend some time, talk about how the guys did, talk about some of the decisions that Washington has to make, and flush that out. So other than that, as the Chiefs are up, some of y'all are going to be listening to this in podcast form later, and you'll know the result of the title game, obviously, on the AFC side. But Chiefs up 7-0 about halfway through the first quarter. By the way, the Commanders still had the ball at this point in the on their opening drive at this point in the first quarter in this game. What a silly one. Yeah, let's get through some of these. We have a Bobby Wagner. We got a couple Bobby Wagner haters. If y'all think Bobby Wagner played bad football this year, I have really bad news for you about your football IQs. He was good. Like, yes, does he struggle in coverage sometimes? Yeah, most linebackers do. It's a really hard position unless you're like Fred Warner. There's a couple other guys that play it really well both ways, but he honestly does pretty well, like okay in that realm. He's a monster against the run, and what he provides everyone else of letting them be in the right spot. I would keep Bobby Wagner, no doubt about it. Let's see. And if a guy had, one bad, if they're going to say, oh, he looked old today. What? Because 3 dudes tripped in front of him and he couldn't get to Saquon Barkley. Maybe let's look at the 3 dudes who tripped in front of him. Let's see. He did not get lost on the Saquon run. Too many people talking about Bobby Wagner. If I had known this what the comments were going to be, then I probably wouldn't have gone into the comments. I am proud of how you guys are apparently not that butthurt by the refs. That's a good job. Yeah, we're gonna skip the comments. And William, we can cut this part out of the last 90 seconds. That can skip the recording for the audio version. That's going to be our show. I say this very sincerely. Thank you. The last month especially has been one heck of a ride. Logan and I have enjoyed the hell out of doing this show, but we've also enjoyed doing it all year long. getting to watch good football this year was so rewarding after, for me, almost 10 years. I think this is my 10th season covering the team, going back to 2015. And this is the one we've been waiting for. But hopefully, because of what Jaden Daniels is, who Adam Peters is, who Dan Quinn is, there are many, many more to come. And we'll be back with Logan, ASAP for another show. This was a tremendous, tremendous season. That was so much fun. I learned a lot, getting to cover a different style of offense and getting to see a different head coach. Like it was all a big learning experience. And I think hopefully it definitely made me smarter about football. I know Logan, who knows more football than anyone I know, he felt the same way, getting to learn from watching. And we hope that you guys learned something along the way and also, enjoyed a couple laughs and genuinely enjoyed it. This isn't meant to be for as nerdy as we can get. We're not two professors out here. And, we joke about Professor Paulson, but we're not trying to put on some kind of dissertation. It's a show. We have fun. And the offseason is really fun as well. So we'll definitely have a good time. We'll do plenty of mailbags. So get your questions ready. And other than that, we'll see you either for another wrap-up show with Logan on Monday, or we will do either a tape review show or just kind of a general show on Tuesday. And then we'll get back into the tape from this one eventually. We will look at it. Promise on that. So with that, that's our show. Thanks a ton for listening and watching all year long. Again, off-season is going to be mega for us. So, and there's nobody who's better on the draft than Logan. So you're definitely going to want to subscribe if you haven't already. Take command wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube at the Team 980, at 1067 The Fan for full episodes, or at Craig Hoffman. I post clips there as well. I'm Craig for Logan and our producer, William. Thanks for a tremendous season, and we will see you guys next time on Take Command.